Have you ever felt like life is unfair? Like you did everything right, worked harder than others, stayed longer, tried to be honest, disciplined, faithful, and yet someone else, who barely showed up, receives the same reward, or even more? It doesn't make sense, and if you're honest, it bothers you, not always out loud. But inside, there's this quiet tension, a question you don't want to admit. Why them and not me? You see someone who came late and still got blessed. Someone who made mistakes and still found peace. Someone who didn't struggle like you, yet somehow they're ahead. And something in you whispers, this isn't fair. But what if the problem is not injustice? What if you're seeing everything through the wrong lens? Most people don't realize this. They think they understand fairness. They think they understand what they deserve. But they don't understand grace. And this misunderstanding quietly shapes how they see God, how they see others, and how they see their own life. Because there is a story, a simple one, that completely turns this idea upside down. And once you truly understand it, you may never look at fairness the same way again. There was a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire workers for his vineyard. At dawn, he found a group of laborers standing in the marketplace, waiting for work. He agreed to pay them a denarius for the day, and he sent them into his vineyard. A few hours later, around the third hour, he went out again. He saw others still standing there, doing nothing. He said to them, "You also go into the vineyard, and I will pay you what is right." And they went. He did the same again at the 6th hour, and then at the 9th. Each time, he found people waiting, and each time, he sent them into his vineyard. Then, around the 11th hour, when the day was almost over, he went out once more. And there were still others standing there. He asked them, "Why have you been standing here all day doing nothing?" They answered, "Because no one has hired us." He said to them, "You also go into the vineyard." Even though there was barely any time left, even though the day was almost finished. And so they went. When evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his manager, "Call the workers and pay them their wages, beginning with the last ones hired and ending with the first." The men who had been hired at the 11th hour came forward. Each of them received a denarius. When those who were hired first saw this, they began to expect more. They had worked through the heat of the day. They had carried the weight of the hours. They had been there from the very beginning. Surely, they would receive more. But when it was their turn, each of them also received a denarius, the same. And as they took their payment, something shifted. They began to murmur, to complain. They said to the landowner, "These men who were hired last worked only 1 hour, and you have made them equal to us, who have borne the burden of the work and the heat of the day." The landowner looked at one of them and said, "Friend, I am not being unfair to you. Didn't you agree to work for a denarius? Take your pay and go. I want to give the one who was hired last the same as I gave you. Don't I have the right to do what I want with my own money? Or are you envious because I am generous?" And so the last became first, and the first became last. The kingdom of heaven is not built on human fairness, but on God's generosity. Fact 1. In the parable, Jesus shows that the landowner goes out again and again to call workers at different times of the day. This reveals that God calls people not at the same moment, but throughout their lives. Jesus is speaking to those who thought they had an advantage because they followed him earlier. He shows that God's invitation is ongoing and open. In life, this looks like people coming to faith, purpose, or change at different stages. Some start early, others much later. And this creates tension, because those who started earlier often feel they deserve more, not because of truth, but because of comparison. Fact 2. Jesus highlights that each group of workers was invited personally. The landowner sees them, speaks to them, and sends them. This shows that God's calling is intentional, not random. Jesus teaches that no one enters God's work by accident. Every person is seen and chosen. In real life, people often feel overlooked or forgotten. They think, "Why wasn't I chosen earlier?" Or, "Why did others get their chance before me?" But this reveals a deeper struggle, the need to feel significant. And because of this, people begin to measure their worth by timing instead of calling. Fact 3. When the workers who were hired first agreed to a denarius, Jesus shows that there was a clear agreement. The landowner did not deceive them. This is important. Jesus is addressing the belief that God is unfair. He makes it clear that what was promised was fully given. In life, people often forget what they already received. They focus not on the agreement, but on what others get. This creates dissatisfaction. A person can receive exactly what they hoped for and still feel empty, simply because someone else received the same or more. And this is where comparison begins to quietly destroy gratitude. Fact 4. In the parable, Jesus deliberately says that the workers who came last were paid first. This is not accidental. It creates a moment where the first workers can see what others receive. Jesus is exposing the heart. He shows that the issue is not payment, but reaction. In life, people are often fine until they see someone else being blessed. Comparison doesn't begin in lack. It begins in visibility. The moment you see what others receive, something inside you starts to measure, calculate, and question. And this is where peace begins to break. Fact 5. Jesus shows that the first workers expected more, not because they were promised more, but because they saw others receiving the same. This reveals a deep spiritual principle. Expectation can shift based on comparison, not truth. Jesus is confronting the mindset of entitlement. In real life, people often change their expectations depending on what others have. They forget their original agreement, their original gratitude. Instead, they rewrite the story in their mind. I deserve more. And this quiet shift turns contentment into dissatisfaction. Fact 6. When the workers begin to complain, Jesus shows their words. You made them equal to us. This is the core of the conflict. Jesus is revealing that the real problem is not injustice, but wounded pride. They could not accept equality. In life, people struggle not only with having less, but with others having the same. Equality can feel offensive when someone believes they earned a higher position. And this reveals something deeper. People often tie their value to being above others, not simply being fulfilled. Fact 7. The landowner responds, "Friend, I am not being unfair to you." Jesus makes this very clear. God's actions are not unjust. The problem is perception. Jesus is correcting the false belief that fairness means more for me than others. In life, people often redefine fairness in a way that benefits their ego. When things go well, they feel it's deserved. When others receive the same or more, suddenly it feels unfair. And this distortion creates inner conflict, not because of reality, but because of expectation shaped by pride. Fact 8. In the parable, Jesus includes the question of the landowner. Don't I have the right to do what I want with my own money? Here, Jesus reveals God's sovereignty. He teaches that God is not bound by human systems of fairness. His generosity is his own decision. In life, people struggle with control. They want life to follow predictable rules. Effort equals reward. Time equals status. But when reality doesn't follow that formula, frustration appears. Not because something is wrong, but because control is slipping away. Fact 9. Jesus adds another sharp line. Or are you envious because I am generous? This exposes the real issue. Envy. Jesus is not just addressing behavior, but the hidden condition of the heart. The problem is not what others receive, but how we react to it. In real life, envy rarely shows itself openly. It hides behind phrases like, "That's not fair," or "I deserved more." But underneath, there is discomfort with someone else's blessing. And this quiet envy can grow, slowly turning joy into bitterness without a person even noticing. Fact 10. At the end, Jesus says, "So the last will be first, and the first last." This is not about position, but about perspective. Jesus is overturning human expectations. Those who think they are first, secure, deserving, ahead, may not understand the kingdom at all. In life, people often build their identity on being ahead, more disciplined, more moral, more committed. But this creates a dangerous illusion, because when identity is built on comparison, it becomes fragile. One moment can shake it, especially when someone else rises unexpectedly. Fact 11. Through the entire parable, Jesus is speaking to those who believed their long service gave them greater claim. He is correcting a spiritual misunderstanding. Time does not earn grace. The reward is not a wage earned, it is a gift given. In life, people often turn everything into a transaction. I did this, so I deserve that. This mindset slowly enters even spiritual life. But when expectations are not met, disappointment grows. Not because God failed, but because the person was relating to him through earning, not through trust. At first, it feels unfair. You give more, you stay longer, you carry the weight others never had to carry. And then you see someone arrive late and receive the same. And something inside you resists it. But this is exactly where Jesus points. I os desut. The problem was never the reward. The problem was the heart that compared. Because the first workers didn't lose anything. They lost their peace. They had what was promised, but they couldn't enjoy it because they were looking at someone else. Podumai. How often do we do the same? We receive enough. We are given what we need, but instead of gratitude, we measure. Instead of peace, we compare. And slowly, joy disappears. Jesus shows something deeper. God is not unfair, He is generous. And if you don't understand this, you will always feel like something is missing, even when nothing is. So the real question is not, why do others receive the same as me? The real question is, can I be at peace with what I've been given? Because the moment you stop comparing, you finally become free.